Tenerife recorded 84 earthquakes over the weekend. Scientists say the swarms are not a short-term eruption signal, and the capital of the island is already planning how to keep water, power, and shelter systems running if that assessment changes. All three of those things are happening at the same time, on an island of 900,000 residents and 6 million annual tourists sitting above a volcanic system that has not erupted in 117 years and has been pressurizing for a decade. On March 8, 2026, the mayor of Santa Cruz de Tenerife created a technical committee to build a municipal eruption response plan, studying the capital's capacity to receive evacuees, maintain essential services, and coordinate logistics if the western municipalities need to empty. The Cabildo de Tenerife announced volcanic risk drills in Santiago del Teide and Guia de Izora, the two towns closest to the rift zones where every historical eruption on the island has occurred. Rosa Davila, president of the Cabildo, said Tenerife is better prepared than ever. The same week, she confirmed that the broader February sequence had produced more than 6,000 seismic events in 3 weeks beneath Las Cañadas del Teide, including a single burst of more than 2,500 hybrid earthquakes that ran for 36 continuous hours, the longest swarm the island has generated in the modern monitoring era. The official alert level remains green, level 1 on a 4-point scale. Officials are not declaring an emergency. They are building one, on paper, in committee rooms, or in drill schedules, while the scientists who advise them keep drawing a hard line between volcanic unrest and imminent eruption. The question between those two positions is the one that matters. If this system crosses the line from hydrothermal pressure to magmatic intrusion, how much warning does an island that runs on one airport and 2 ports actually get? Tenerife is the largest and most populated island in the Canary archipelago. Teide National Park draws roughly 4 million visitors a year, the most visited national park in Europe. On any given day, hundreds of tourists ride the cable car to 3,555 meters and hike trails that sit directly above the zone producing the swarms 7 kilometers below. The island runs on one primary international airport, a port system that moves all its fuel and food from the mainland, and a road network that passes through the volcanic highlands connecting the southern tourist coast to the northern population centers. If the caldera zone or western rift needed to close, the island's internal transport would split in half. The caldera itself, Las Cañadas del Teide, roughly 10 by 17 kilometers, is the system generating the activity. The earthquakes are not ordinary tectonic events. They are hybrid signals, part rock fracture, part fluid resonance, produced when pressurized gas and hot water force through cracks in volcanic rock and stress it enough to break. Davila described it as gas injection into the hydrothermal system rather than magma movement. That distinction is critical. Gas and hot water pushing through fractures produce small, repetitive, or mostly unfelt earthquakes that can number in the thousands without crossing into eruption. Magma forcing its way toward the surface produces something different. Larger earthquakes that escalate in magnitude, migrate upward through shallower rock, and trigger ground deformation that satellites and GPS can track in real time. The current swarms have not done that. The depths have stayed stable. The magnitudes have stayed low. The ground above has not inflated. Scientists are watching for 3 signals to arrive together: earthquake magnitudes climbing and migrating toward the surface, measurable ground swelling across the caldera, and a sharp rise in sulfur dioxide or carbon dioxide emissions. None have appeared. Pevolca's scientific committee reviewed the full data set in January 2025 and concluded that the activity was anomalous but did not appear to be precursory to a short-term eruptive process, while noting that medium to long-term probability had increased. The system is pressurizing its hydrothermal plumbing, not, as far as the instruments can determine, pushing magma toward a vent. That is the basis for every official reassurance since 2016. It is also the uncomfortable truth beneath those reassurances. Hydrothermal pressurization is what volcanic systems do for years or decades before the phase that produces eruption precursors. The pressurization did not begin in February 2026. It began in 2016 when scientists first detected anomalous seismic, geodetic, and geochemical changes beneath Las Cañadas. That October, the Western Caldera produced its first modern hybrid swarm. It was brief. A second hit the same location in June 2019. June and July 2022 produced two more, with scientists noting that the anomalous changes had intensified, possibly driven by rising hydrothermal pressure. INVOLCAN's gas monitoring registered the highest volcanic gas emissions on the island, consistent with an increasing volume of hot gas migrating upward through fractured rock and escaping through the soil across the caldera floor. The last time Tenerife produced a comparable episode of heightened concern was spring 2004. Increased seismicity, fumarolic activity at the summit, carbon dioxide changes on the northwestern flank, and felt earthquakes that triggered a first-level alert. That episode subsided without eruption. But the 2022 to 2023 intensification was different. Not a single spike and decline, but a baseline rising with each successive year. November 2024 brought another swarm. August 2025, another. 8 episodes since 2016, centered on the same zone, at the same depth, and the gaps between them compressing. February 2026 broke the scale. By February 12th, hybrid events were arriving by the hundreds. Davila confirmed more than 1,000 between February 12th and midnight on February 18th. A new burst starting that night added 950 more in a single pulse. By February 23rd, Domínguez confirmed the count had passed 6,000. The weekly Guayota report from INVOLCAN covering late February through early March logged 330 more and noted that the highest levels of diffusive volcanic gas emissions continued across the island. After a brief drop, 50 more events arrived on March 14th and 84 over the following weekend. The system throttled back. It did not stop. Domínguez drew the comparison that frames the entire risk calculation. What would be concerning is if dozens were recorded in an hour with greater magnitudes, as occurred prior to the eruption of Tajogaite in La Palma in 2021. That eruption, same archipelago, same monitoring network, same volcanic system family, gave the clearest recent template for what Canary Island precursors look like. In the days before Cumbre Vieja opened on September 19, 2021, La Palma produced escalating swarms that migrated from roughly 10 kilometers depth toward the surface over 8 days, centimeters of ground deformation visible on GPS, and gas spikes confirming magma was physically rising through the crust. The warning window was approximately 1 week. The eruption lasted 85 days, produced lava flows that destroyed more than 1,600 buildings, displaced over 7,000 residents, buried agricultural land under meters of basalt, and forced repeated airspace restrictions across the Western Canary Islands. The monitoring worked. The evacuations were ordered in time. Nobody died from the eruption itself. Tenerife's monitoring network is at least as dense, more than 100 IGN stations, continuous gas and deformation tracking, weekly Guayota reports from INVOLCAN. If eruption precursors appear, the instruments will almost certainly detect them. The gap is not detection, it is time. Domínguez acknowledged it directly. In science, we cannot guarantee this 100%. A 1-week warning window on La Palma meant evacuating 7,000 people from a rural volcanic flank. The same window on Tenerife means evacuating tens of thousands from Santiago del Teide and Guía de Isora, the western municipalities sitting on the rift zones where Chiñero erupted in 1909, Chahora in 1798, and the Garachico eruption of 1706 destroyed the island's then primary port. It means managing hundreds of thousands of tourists funneling through one international airport that volcanic ash could close for days or weeks. It means supplying 900,000 residents through ports that carry all the island's fuel, food, and medicine from the mainland at freight speed. and it means routing evacuees to Santa Cruz on the northeastern coast, where the mayor has just started studying whether the capital can absorb them, while the island's only road through the Caldera Highlands may be closed. La Palma proved the monitoring works. It also proved the warning window is short. No drill on Tenerife has tested whether the island's infrastructure can execute at that speed. On February 26th, a magnitude 4.1 earthquake between Tenerife and Gran Canaria gave the island its only directly felt moment in this entire sequence. About 10 seconds of shaking reported by thousands across both islands. It was tectonic, unrelated to the tide swarm, and originated near the Enmedio submarine volcano, roughly 25 kilometers offshore. The cone sits about 1,600 meters below sea level, a volcanic structure most people did not know existed until the quake made it news. A week later, CSIC published the first multidisciplinary evidence of hydrothermal activity at Enmedio, water 0.5 degrees warmer above its summit, turbidity and nutrient anomalies, signs of heated fluid rising through fractured seafloor rock. Researcher Eugenio Fraile Nuez said the submarine volcano showed hydrothermal circulation that had barely been studied before. CSIC said explicitly, "This does not indicate an eruption, and it is not connected to the Las Cañadas swarm. Two separate volcanic systems, two separate mechanisms." In the public conversation, that distinction collapsed almost immediately. Tabloids and social media merged Teide, Enmedio, and the Santa Cruz planning into one eruption narrative that no official source supported. Manuel Miranda, the minister responsible for Pevolca, named the real short-term threat directly: alarmism and disinformation. The biggest danger to public safety on Tenerife right now is not the volcanic system. It is the information environment surrounding it. The alert is green. The swarms are ongoing. The drills are scheduled. The monitoring network is recording every pulse from a system that has been pressurizing for a decade and produced its strongest expression in February 2026. The 84 earthquakes logged over the March 14th to 16th weekend arrived weaker than the February peak, but they arrived. Tenerife has not erupted in 117 years. The scientists operating the monitoring network have been correct every time they have said the current activity is not a short-term eruption precursor. The municipal government is preparing for the scenario where that assessment changes. And the volcanic system beneath Las Cañadas, the one that has pulsed 8 times since 2016 with increasing frequency and intensity, is still making decisions at 7 to 21 kilometers depth that no instrument can overrule and no committee can schedule around. Green does not mean safe. It means the signals that come before it stops being green have not arrived yet. For an island of 900,000 people above a system that pulsed 6,000 times in 3 weeks, that distinction is the narrowest possible margin between ordinary life and the shortest warning window in European volcanic history.